screen, and you should have the little mindset character guy lifting his weights there, because that's what we're going to do in this particular session. We're going to learn about how to build your mindset muscles to get the best results for yourself. So my name is Marcel Vieira, and I'm the Director of Melmarvi Coaching and Training. I work with people to help them develop their mindsets and to help them do a variety of things, including overcoming limiting beliefs, setting and achieving goals, and basically building the best version of themselves that we can work on. As well as being a mindset coach, I'm also a teacher and a musician and an author. I've written a couple of music textbooks as well. But the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp is all about you. It's all about building the life that you want. And we're going to learn about how to do that by overcoming limiting beliefs, or understanding how these limiting beliefs work, and understanding what it is that you want to achieve out of yourself. To do this, though, it's really helpful to have some tools, and that's what the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp is going to do. It's going to give you a variety of tools to help you understand the steps involved, or how your mind thinks, and also then how the results that you're getting, how that comes to be. So it's all about getting enough information for you to then make other decisions and move forward. And it's also about looking at the areas in your life which you're really happy with, or that are going fantastically well. And with those particular things, what we're going to look at is, all right, how do you enhance those so that you make them even better? So we're using this interface called GoToWebinar, and you should be hearing my voice and seeing my screen. As I mentioned at the start, your microphones have been muted, and that's basically to avoid any background noise. But I've seen that a lot of you have said hello, so I understand that the session's coming through to you nice and loud and clear. So let's have a quick look at what this is going to involve. So the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp is going to involve 4 weekly webinars, of which this is the first one. And this particular webinar is all about understanding how your mind works. Next week, we're going to be looking at how we're building the best version of you. So that's looking at, okay, what is it that you would really want to achieve? In week 3, we're going to look at goal setting and the steps involved in setting and achieving goals. And you may have had attempts at setting goals before, and you may have been really successful with them. Or the opposite of that might be that you may have struggled, that you kind of set a goal and it doesn't really work out. So we're going to look at the steps involved in week 3 to organize and set and actually achieve your goals as well. And then in our last week, we're going to talk about living, what we refer to as living above the line, which is all about understanding how to take responsibility for the changes in your life to be able to get you to do the things that you want to do. So in addition to that, you'll also receive 2 targeted coaching sessions. Now, the way the coaching sessions work is that you'll have a 1-hour session where we focus entirely on you and entirely on your needs and the things that you want to achieve. These sessions are confidential, so it's between yourself and the coach. And it really is about getting all the tools that you're going to learn throughout these 4 weeks and then applying it in your life. So one thing is to sort of get a understanding so that you can talk about it or put the links together to understand how all of this works. But the further step is, all right, how does this apply to you in your life? Because that's where the real changes occur. Now, for the coaching sessions, it's going to be either myself or my colleague Nicole Latham, who's on the call right now. And Nicole runs her business called Elite Life Mastery. She's also a coach and also a mindset coach, and works with people to help them achieve their goals, overcome their limiting beliefs, and look at any areas of their lives that they want to improve. And basically what's going to happen is that if I know you because you're a colleague or a friend, what we tend to find in coaching is that it actually helps if there's a little bit of distance between the person doing the coaching and the person receiving it. So to help out with that, Nicole's come on board, and I thank you very much, Nicole, to help out with how all of that's going to work. I'm going to give you more information at the end of this session about how the coaching sessions will work. Now, throughout this session, if you find that there's something that you want to ask, or there's a question or something like that, please make sure that you let me know, either put your hand up or even write the question down, and we will have a question time at the end. But if you're finding that I'm moving too fast, or if something doesn't make sense, please make sure that you ask so that I can move on to that. And I'll just change my screen a little bit so that I can have a little window open. There we go. And let's begin. Let's start boot camp. So let's begin with what's the difference. And excuse me while I have a little drink of water. So one of the reasons that I've started with mindset development, I really am truly fascinated by understanding how people think and feel, and the differences between people that get their life really well and people that really struggle with it. I'm really fascinated with what makes the difference, right? And there is a significant difference. And to illustrate that, I'm going to share a story about some students that I've taught. Now, some years ago, I taught two students who, but my background is in music, by the way, so I've been music teaching for quite a few years now. And with these two students, both of them came to my class when they were in their year 9 class. So they would have been about 14 at the time, maybe 15, around there. And in both of their cases, they were very, very keen musicians. They just had a love of music, and they were prepared to put in all the time and effort required to do the best version of becoming a musician that they could. Really interestingly, both of them had some quite distinct similarities about their situation. For starters, I was their teacher, so they were getting me as their influence for a period of 4 years. This lasted. Another similarity was that they were both in the same school. They both lived in the same socio-economic area, and they had similar resources in terms of their financial background and things like that. There were some differences, but overall, they were basically two students in the same uniform wanting the same thing, which was to become the best version of a musician that they could. What was really interesting is that after the 4 years, where both of the students ended up, and they both ended up in completely different places. One student fizzled away in terms of what her potential was. By the end of the 4 years of my influence on them, this particular student had basically had enjoyed doing music and still had a love of doing music, but in terms of her skills on her instrument or instruments, they had kind of plateaued, and not much had really changed. The other student, on the other hand, who started off with the same level of understanding, both of them were more or less complete beginners when I took over them as well. The second student ended up progressing at an exponential rate. It was absolutely amazing watching this student progress and develop her skills. So much so that it got to a point where I passed her on to some of my tutors that I had studied with because she was progressing so quickly. Now, to get to the end of the result here, what ended up happening was that this second student made it to study at the Conservatorium of Music, which is one of Sydney's best musical institutions. And not only did she get to study there, she got to study there on full scholarship, which means that they're paying for all of the studies. And the thing that really fascinated me about all of this was, how is it that I have these two students, I have them for the same amount of time, I'm giving them the same information, I'm giving them the same influences, yet one of them really successfully skyrockets and the other one kind of stays at the same level. And what it comes down to is mindset. It really came down to mindset. You see, the student that became very successful, very early on, she came and sat down with me and said, look, I want to be a musician. I want to become a working musician. Can you let me know what needs to happen? And we said, sure. And we basically mapped out a 4-year plan, a progression for her to move from one stage to the next stage to the next stage to get to the point where she was studying university and beyond. I did something similar with the other student as well, but the difference was that the successful student was able to maintain a very high level of focus on what her desired outcome was. She was able to build within her a mindset that allowed her to keep focus, to keep on target, to maintain quite a rigorous practice schedule on the instrument and study schedule, and not be too deterred when the setbacks came along, which allowed her to do very well in school, but also very well at the university and conservatorium level as well. And what it was, this mindset basically allowed her to achieve all of those things. Even though she had, quite a few obstacles along the way, she was able to very successfully achieve that. The other student, even though she had perhaps more enthusiasm and more energy to achieve this, what would happen with her is that her mindset wasn't as focused, and in fact at times it was very spread out. I remember one time she went from wanting to become a musician and working as hard as she could to being completely thrown off track because she had gotten herself a brand new laptop. And the distraction of a laptop, right, of a computer, a new device, meant that all her focus completely switched onto a brand new thing instead of keeping it focused on her music skills. Whereas the successful student consistently over a period of 4 years maintained that focus. So from my point of view as a mindset coach, one of the things that I was doing is that I really dug around and thought, okay, what is it that makes a difference? So let's pull this mindset thing apart, because if you get to understanding how mindset works, you're going to be able to use this as a tool to be able to change whatever it is that you want in your life. So mindset. Mindset is how you think and feel about people, about events, about your environment, even about your beliefs. And what this means is that the way that you think and feel about things causes some results, right? It creates changes within you to act or be a particular way. So to illustrate this, let's have a look at this little flow chart here. If we begin with mindset, right, which is all about how your mind has been set up to think. That's what mindset really is. It's how you have set your mind up to think. And we'll get to understanding that ultimately it is you who is making these changes. We have a lot of influences, right, and they certainly play their part. But fundamentally, it really boils down to you as a person making choices and decisions to go, okay, I'm going to keep this about my mindset. I'm going to change this about my mindset. I'm going to throw this out and I want to add this to it. Okay. So what happens is that mindset affects the way that you think and feel. Our behaviors flow on from the way that we think and feel about things. So if you think positively about something, that's going to create a particular behavior. If you think negatively about something, that is going to create a particular behavior as well. The behaviors that you consistently do result in consequences. Okay, and you need to remember that as humans, we're creatures of habits. We spend a lot of time developing a particular mindset, which causes us to think and feel in a particular way, and that creates behaviors. Now, when we do these behaviors consistently, we end up getting some results, some outcomes out of that particular process. Right, so to get to this, let's understand what consequences are. So if we break up the word consequence, in Spanish, con means with. You may have heard chili con carne, which means chili with meat. So the word con means with, and sequence, the word sequence means an order in which related things follow. So if we come back to our mindset idea, the way that you think and feel about things creates behaviors, and your behaviors are effectively creating consequences. Now, the outcomes, the results that you're getting currently out of your life, whether you love them or whether you want to completely change them, whether you're frustrated by them or whether you've cultivated into something really beautiful, are all a consequence of these behaviors. Okay, and this applies to every aspect of your life. For example, let me go backwards here, and I'll use myself as an example. One of the things that's really important to me is my health and fitness. And so I've spent good deal of time cultivating a mindset that causes me to think and feel very positively about exercising. So my personal goal is to try to exercise twice a week so that I keep my body functioning the way that I want it to function. And for me, being a father of 2 daughters, one of my goals is to be able to run around the backyard with the girls, or kick a soccer ball around, or play a game of chasings or tips, and not feel like I'm completely huffed and puffed out and I've got to sit down and I haven't got any more energy. So my mindset about exercise, when I go and exercise, what I'm really thinking is, I understand that by doing this process, I'm actually going to be able to run around with my daughters and not feel huffed and puffed. So because my mindset I've trained my mindset to think that particular way, that results in some behaviors. Now, the behaviors that it's leading to is that consistently I'll go to the gym and I'll do my exercise sessions. There are times where I can't get to the gym. Either work is too busy, or family influences kick in sometimes, or there are just some times where I might be a bit sick or just not feeling up for doing it. And that's okay. But what happens in these situations is that I might miss a session, or I might miss 2 sessions. The furthest that I'll probably go is about a week or a week and a half without doing any training, because my mindset about exercise will cause me to think and feel in an uncomfortable way about not exercising. So what will end up happening is that I'll end up getting myself to the gym and sometimes even dragging myself there, because that's what my mindset is telling me to do. And we'll get onto this in a little bit more detail. It's really fascinating how this works. So the behavior of me turning up to the gym and doing my training results in consequences. The consequences are that I feel fit, healthy, strong, and able to run around with my daughters and not feel like I'm about to have a heart attack. And for me, they are some pretty cool consequences to have. The outcome of all of this is that is a really positive outcome for me. And what we're going to learn to do in the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp is look at the outcomes that you're getting that are coming as a consequence of your behaviors, and deciding, do you want to keep this or do you want to change it? That's basically the formula that we're going to follow. So every outcome that you get is a direct result of your mindset. Every outcome that you get. So the areas where you are most happy are because you've cultivated thought patterns to get to that point. The areas where you're unhappy have the same idea behind them. And what this really boils down to is that if you change your mindset, you can very successfully change your life. So the whole function of this is to build what you desire. We're going to move you to a point where you can get all of the blocks that you're going to receive and put them together to get whatever outcomes you want. Hopefully this is making sense, but if you've got any questions, please make sure that you type them in, or raise your hand, and I'll see if I can come around to answering your questions. And if not, at the end, we'll also have a bit of a question time as well to help us go through all of these. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how mindset really works. So you may have heard that we use approximately 10% of our mind. In fact, I believe there's a movie on at the moment called Lucy, which talks a little bit of that. I haven't seen the movie myself, but I'm really keen to get out and see this one. And in the promos for the movies, it says something along the line, that as humans, we only use about 10% of our mind. And as a mindset coach, I really want to find out, why is it that we're only using 10%, and how is this broken down, or how does it work? So this is my version of events. This is the understanding that I've taken from doing quite a few years of learning about this area. Our mind is broken up into 3 broad areas. The first area is what we call the unconscious mind. And excuse me while I have a quick drink of water. So, how does the unconscious mind work? The unconscious mind is the part of your mind that basically is set up to look after the well-being of your body. It almost has a self-preservation aspect to it, where what it does, it looks after basic body functions to allow you to free up your mind so that you can do other things. The types of things that this looks after are breathing. There's a really good chance that you've been sitting here listening to me for this webinar and you haven't really given too much thought to how you are breathing. However, it's been happening all along. You see, can you imagine sitting there and going, okay, I need to focus on my breathing. I can hear Marcel, I know he's talking, but I need to focus on my breathing. So I'm going to take a deep breath now. And you take a deep breath. And then you go, oh, I better remember to let it out. And you let the breath out. And you keep doing that for the whole hour. You'll be so consumed in being able to breathe that you won't be able to free up your mind to actually listen to the content that I'm giving you and being able to put some of this information together for yourself. All right, so the unconscious mind, or this 10% part of our mind, looks after stuff like breathing, blinking, your heartbeat. It's all the basic body functions that allow you to keep alive. In fact, when you get knocked unconscious, or if ever you've been knocked out, right, knocked unconscious, or in boxing, for example, the whole aim of boxing, or one of the aims, is to knock the other guy out to the point that he's unconscious, that he can't respond anymore. Now, when someone's unconscious, what happens is that the body is still working, and that's the 10% part of your unconscious mind that looks after all of that. It makes sure that your body maintains all its functions so that you can come out of it and become conscious again. Right. Another example is if ever you've had some sort of surgery where they give you a general anesthetic and they basically knock you unconscious. Now, if they completely knocked you out, the problem would be that your brain wouldn't allow you to breathe or keep your heart flowing blood around your system. And so that you'll end up dying, which isn't a very good outcome. So the unconscious mind looks after that aspect of our being. And it's something that happens automatically and you don't have to think about it. And here's one of the distinctions, that with the unconscious mind, you don't have to think about what's happening. This morning when you woke out of bed, I want you to have a think of this. Did you step out of your bed and put your left foot first, or did you put your right foot first? Or did you put both feet down at the same time? Now, the likelihood is that you've got no idea which foot you put down first. And that's because your unconscious mind has been trained to understand how to walk. So it just goes, you know what, I just need you to move. This is something that isn't important for you to be focusing on. Let me look after which foot you put down first so that you can get out of bed. To contrast that, if ever you've looked at a baby or a youngster trying to learn how to walk, for them, it's a very different process. It is not unconscious at all. It is very much a conscious process. And they are very carefully thinking about, what happens if I move this foot? And then I better try and move this foot, and then they'll fall over, and then they'll get back up again, and they're looking at everyone else's walking and going, okay, I've got to be able to do this as well. So for them, it becomes a very conscious process until such time as it becomes automatic, in which case it kind of shifts down into the unconscious mind and you don't need to think about it anymore. It works on autopilot or automatically. So the next 10% of our mind is the conscious mind. And the biggest definition about the conscious mind is all about awareness. Your conscious mind is the part of your mind where you are aware of the things that are happening to you. For example, at this point in time, I want you to put your attention on how your back and your bottom feels on the chair that you're sitting. I'm assuming that you're sitting, right? And I want you to try to think of, where am I feeling some pressure? Am I comfortable? Is it hurting a little bit? Am I a little bit tight? Do I need to stretch my shoulders? Now, the likelihood is that you probably weren't thinking too much about how you were sitting in your chair, But the moment that I've brought it into your conscious mind, it's kind of come up to the surface again, and all of a sudden you're probably thinking about it. You're probably putting in some effort into going, oh, that's interesting, I feel this and I wasn't aware of it. So the conscious mind lets you know what is happening inside of you, all right? Or it's something, or even outside of you. You can become aware of the things that are outside of you. So what I want you to do now as well is start paying attention to your surroundings. So look across the room that you're sitting. The likelihood is that you're in front of a computer screen. What else is around you? Now, there's a good chance that you probably have been distracted and not even looking at the things that are around you. So the conscious mind is very much about being in the present moment. The conscious mind is also the rational part of our brain. This is the part that thinks and considers things. And it kind of looks at the potential consequences of things as well. For example, at some point you all found out about the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp, and your conscious mind would have gone through a process of looking at that information and going, oh, this looks pretty good. I think I might be able to get something from that. Now, that doesn't mean that you actually go ahead and do something, right? So, for example, let's have a look at, just to pick an example, let's look at people who smoke. Most smokers that I've spoken to and work with will be able to very clearly tell you all of the health problems that smoking has. So they'll be able to say to you, yes, I understand that it's, potentially causes lung cancer and it causes problems with my breathing and it's not good for me. They understand all of that. You can give them brochures and pamphlets and you can take them to doctors and, all the family can talk to them about it and so on. And they understand that it's not good for them. Their conscious mind gets that. However, they still light up and they still continue to smoke. And what we need to understand is, why is it that that continues to happen? Because when you understand that, you can then make different choices about it. The conscious mind will consider it and weigh it all up, but it doesn't mean that it actually happens. All right. Another example is that the conscious mind will consider something like, hey, I should be eating healthy foods. Great. Or it might be thinking, you know what, I've got to get onto this task. I better stop procrastinating and get onto it. But it doesn't mean that you'll actually go ahead and do that. The conscious mind sees it. It understands that it's going to be beneficial for you to do a choice, but it doesn't mean that you actually go on and make that choice. And the reason that you don't necessarily make that choice is because of what's happening underneath. I should mention as well that the conscious mind is the type of mind that loves to analyze stuff. It analyzes and analyzes and it looks and it weighs up all the options and the pros and cons. It loves that aspect of thinking. Again, it doesn't mean that you'll actually do anything about it. And here's the reason why. Because underneath our conscious mind sits what's called the subconscious mind. And this part of our mind is a big, chunky 80%, thereabouts, of how we think or how our mind operates. So you've got the conscious mind, very aware. You've got the unconscious mind, almost completely the opposite. It just works on automatic pilot. It's unaware. But then you have this subconscious mind, and sub means underneath. And it's almost like a layer of thinking and beliefs that sits underneath your conscious mind. And to give you an understanding of how this subconscious mind works, I want you to answer these questions just to yourself. I'm going to give you a statement. And what I want you to do is pay very close attention to the very first thing that comes to mind. All right. For example, you need to think for yourself if this is accurate for you. Or in fact, it's even better if you say it to yourself. Say this statement: I am a fantastic singer. Now, the first thing that's come up into your mind is usually an indication of your subconscious belief about whether you are a fantastic singer or not. If you can't sing at all and you think that you've got a particularly bad voice, or that you're the type of singer that breaks glasses when you sing, or the dogs start to howl in the background, the likelihood is that when you said to yourself, I am a fantastic singer, the next thing would have been, no way, that's just a lie. Or you can insert a couple of swear words to disagree with that as well. Okay. Let me give you another example. I want you to say this and see what the first pattern is that comes up, or the first subconscious thought that comes up. So say this to yourself: I look sexy and I know it. Now, what's really interesting is that if you genuinely feel that you look sexy and you know it, you would have said, yeah, I look sexy and I know it. If at a subconscious level you disagree with that, you would have had a different response. Okay? Let's do another one. Here's another subconscious pattern. I have all the money that I need to do what I want. Say that to yourself. I have all the money that I need to do what I want. Now again, whatever has come up for you is an indication of your subconscious belief. If you're sitting there and you've got abundant money to do the things that you want, you would have agreed and said, yeah, that's true. I agree with that. If you're struggling to make ends meet, you would have had a very different subconscious belief that comes out of that. So one way to tap into this subconscious mind is to ask yourself a question and then listen very carefully for what the very first response is. It's typically the first response that comes up, because what happens after that is that the conscious mind kicks in and will start to debate whatever this belief is. All right. So for example, your conscious mind might say to itself, you know what, I'm going to start eating healthily. And your subconscious mind kicks in and says something like, you're not going to start eating healthily. You're unfit. You're unhealthy. The KFC is on the way home from work, and you know that you love a crispy fillet bacon burger. Let's just drive there. It'll be really convenient. And just like that, your conscious mind gets blown out of the water with whatever your subconscious mind is actually thinking. So we move from your conscious mind saying, hey, I'm going to start eating healthily, to your subconscious mind replaying whatever patterns have been put into that system. Right? So hopefully you're following me. Let's pull this apart a little bit more, because this is where the real magic happens in terms of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is a little bit like, it's basically a storage for all of your belief patterns. Everything that you believe to be true is held in your subconscious mind. And all that happens, one of two things will happen. The first thing is that if whatever your conscious mind is saying to itself, if that agrees with your subconscious mind, then it's all good. Everything just works. It's like in the picture that you've got there, you've got two gears, like from a bicycle. And in this situation, the bike is going to be pedaling in a particular direction. The back wheel is going to be moving in that direction. Everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's all good. However, when your conscious mind disagrees with your subconscious mind, for example, hey, I'm going to start eating healthy, and your subconscious mind goes, no, you are unfit and unhealthy, and you love junk food, you're not going to be doing that. What will happen is that this subconscious mind will just beat up your conscious mind into submission, and the subconscious mind will have its way. Really importantly, the subconscious aspect of your mind doesn't judge whether whatever outcome you're getting or whatever consequence you're getting is good or bad for you. It doesn't really care whether it serves you or supports you, or whether it nurtures you, or whether it encourages you. It just executes whatever it has been programmed to do. So to get a better understanding of this, let's have a look at Need for Speed Undercover. Now, one of the things that you're going to get to know about me is that I love race cars. And unfortunately, at this stage of my life, my wife isn't letting me go out and buy a race car and go racing on the weekend just yet. But I'm working on a mindset to allow her to be able to do that for me, which would be really cool. And I'll keep you posted on whether that actually works out or not. However, one of the things that I enjoy doing is playing video games of race cars. It gives me the same, or not the same, but it gives me a pretty cool feeling about what it would be like to drive one of these cars for real. And this is a screenshot of one of the games that I play. It's a screenshot from my phone. And the game's called Need for Speed Undercover. And what I'm going to do is explain to you how this relates to our mindset. So in this particular game, the way it works is that when I load up the game on my phone to play it, the car that you see, this grey car, will start to automatically accelerate. It will automatically start moving forward. I don't need to do anything about it. In fact, I can turn the game on and the countdown will just say 3, 2, 1, start. And I don't need to touch anything, do anything. The car will simply move forward. I can tilt my phone to make it turn left or right. So I can avoid the car that's coming up ahead by tilting the phone a little bit to the left. Or if I want to crash into it, I can turn into the right and really steer into it. And that's about all the game lets me do. I can go really fast. I can turn. Oh, and I've got a button that lets me slow the car down. So I can press the brake button to slow it down. Outside of that, it doesn't let me do much else. Now, what's interesting is that I can get that car and turn it directly into the pylons that are coming up and completely crash into it, and nothing happens to the car in the video game. It just keeps going along. I can drive right up to the back of that blue car, I think it is, that's up ahead, and crash right into that, and nothing's going to happen. It will just crash into it and bump that car out of the way, but there's absolutely no damage to my video game car. It's not going to affect the handling. Nothing's going to be bent. Nothing's going to get broken. A few of the things that this particular game doesn't let me do is there's no way that I can go backwards. So I can go forward, I can turn, I can brake, I can crash into as many things as I want, but it's not going to let me go backwards. So for example, if I wanted to do a U-turn, I could turn as far to the right as I can, and all that's going to happen is that this car is going to go into that building and just keep crashing along the side of it, and the car's not going to brake, and as soon as I turn away from it, it's going to keep running as per normal. All right, so this game has been set up with all of these parameters to allow a particular gaming experience. And what happens is that the experience that we have has been set up to allow the player to enjoy it without the need of worrying that the car's broken or that the car's crashing or anything like that. Now, if I wanted to make a change to that game, I could actually get in contact with the developers of that game, the people that actually created it, the people that wrote the computer code to create this, and get in contact with them and probably pay them a whole stack of money and say, hey, can you change this game? Can you write a special version for me so that when I drive and crash into something that it's going to break the car, to give me a realistic experience? And I also want to have it so that I can go backwards. I want to have a reverse gear on it, and I want to be able to do things like U-turns. And I want to be able to have it so that if I accelerate the car too much over a long period of time, the engine's going to overheat and it's going to stop working as well. Right, so I could theoretically, or hypothetically I should say, contact the developers, pay them some money, and they would write a special version of that particular game. So how does this relate to mindset? Well, this is how it relates to mindset. I mentioned before that your subconscious mind has belief programs. A belief program is how you believe the world around you to be. And all of us have belief programs built into our system. They basically form the person that we are. Your belief programs can either help you, they can serve you or support you or nurture you, or they can challenge you in a positive way, or they can limit you, they can get you very frustrated, they can cause things to go wrong. And the belief program does not really care what outcome it's achieving for you. It simply executes whatever it's been programmed to do. And this is really important to understand, because in the same way that the video game, I can crash it as much as I want, but the car's not going to crash. It's just going to keep driving fine because it has been set up to not break down. So your belief programs work in a similar way. how you have set up your belief programs result in the types of behaviors that you end up doing, which ends up resulting in consequences, and you get what you're currently getting in your life right now. So it helps to understand belief programs in terms of how computers work, which is why I used a computer game as an example. So with a computer, you can see on the screen there that it's got the letter R. And what happens on your computer typically in a particular, if let's say you've opened up a program like Microsoft Word that lets you type a letter, and when you press the letter R on the keyboard, you would expect to see the letter R pop up on the screen, because that's what the keyboard has been programmed to do. What's really interesting though, in my background as a musician, I do a lot of recording of music. And in some of the recording programs that I do, when I set up a microphone and or put in a guitar and I'm about to start to record, I've actually programmed the computer keyboard to start recording when I press the letter R. It makes it a bit more convenient. I don't have to move around with a mouse. So the same letter on a keyboard can create a completely different result. And the keyboard or the computer does not care which version of that it's doing. It's simply going to execute a command that it's been programmed to do. And this is the part that I really want to get you to hopefully appreciate, that your subconscious mind is like one big computer that's been programmed by yourself predominantly, but also by the influences around you. And it's set up a whole stack of belief programs about you as a person, and about the events around you, and about the way that you lead your life, right? And what we're going to teach you to do is how to effectively reprogram yourself so that you can get different results, or reprogram yourself so that you can enhance the results that you want to maintain. You might be thinking there, okay, so how do we get these programs? And I mentioned that a big part of it is that at some point in your life, you've made those decisions to program yourself in that particular way. You've created these belief patterns along the path. However, one of the biggest influences are our families, especially our parents. You see, when at a very, very young age, you're at what's called an imprint stage, which lasts, if I remember correctly, somewhere like until 4 or 5 years of age. Where at that age, life is pretty good. You haven't got too many concerns or worries. Your biggest concern is kind of, have I been fed, and have I slept enough, and have I got a clean nappy? And if those three things are met, you're pretty much happy, right? But as you grow up, you start to get other things happening to you, and you start to develop your mind in different ways. And this is where usually our parents or caregivers have a really significant impact on how we do what we currently do now. Because what happens is that you start to form ideas about how the world around you works based on your parents' understanding. So if you grew up with your parents going away on holidays, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, then the likelihood is that you've developed a belief program that as a family you go out on holidays 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. However, if you had the opposite of that, where your parents rarely ever went away on holidays because they were always too busy working, or for whatever reason, maybe you didn't have the resources or whatever the case may be, the likelihood is that you've probably developed a belief program that kind of mimics that. And you might find that you're the type of person that doesn't really go away a lot on holidays because you're either too busy at work, or you haven't got the resources to do it, or for whatever other reason. So your parents, your caregivers, the people around you, especially when you're young, have a fairly significant impact along the way. So from around the age of 7 onwards, what happens is that you start to develop an idea or a sense of how things in the world around you work. And then what happens in your teenage years and so on is that you start to get evidence to support these beliefs. And if you get enough evidence to support whatever belief you've created, then you'll probably keep that belief into your adulthood. If you find enough evidence to support something differently, then you'll probably change that belief along the way. Now, what's really cool is that it doesn't matter which stage of the journey you're on, the really thing that's important, the thing that's important to understand is that we can learn to change our belief programs at any stage of our life. And that's what we're going to be looking at. So, I want you to think of your mindset as being a garden. And I am not a gardener. When we got our house, we had very lovely gardens because the people that owned the house before us loved their gardens and, you know, looked after the lawn and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? I'm just not a gardening person. I would prefer to be playing the guitar, doing anything other than going out in the backyard and doing some gardening. So what happened to my garden is that it just got completely corrupted with weeds. There were weeds all over the place, to the point that you couldn't see any of the plants because the weeds are growing over it. And if you're a non-gardening type of person, you might find that your garden looks a little bit the same. Now, the neighbors across the road, completely different story. They have beautiful gardens, and they've got fantastic flowers. There's no weeds. There's no bindies on their lawn. They always walk around barefoot, you know, and I never walk around barefoot because I'm worried about all the bindies that are going to end up in my feet. But their garden is really nicely maintained. It's been really nicely cultivated. And I want you to imagine that your mind is a little bit like a garden, in that it will either have all the things that you want in there, or it's probably got a bunch of weeds in there. In some cases, maybe your mind is just completely full of weeds. And when I'm referring to the weeds, I'm thinking to all the things that disempower you, all the negative thoughts, all the things that kind of grind at you and that you just can't move ahead from. They're all the weeds that we relate to in the garden. And what's really important is for you to develop a mindset for whatever changes you want to cultivate. You need to do a bit of mind gardening. What's likely to happen is that you're going to need to go through a process where you rip out some of these weeds. Depending on how long you've had these belief patterns, so if you developed a belief pattern when you were 5 years of age and you're now 40, you've been growing this weed for 35 years, that's going to take a little bit of digging up, all right? And you're probably going to have to get right in there and rip it out from its roots and rip out the weeds to clear the space for the things that you want to see grow in your mindset. Now, what's really interesting about gardens, and you may have had this experience because I certainly did, I would get to a point where I'd go, you know what, my gardens are just looking no good, I've got to do something about it. So you go off and spend the weekend ripping out weeds and rip, get rid of them all. And you go, wow, that's fantastic, there's no weeds in the garden. And then I wouldn't do any more gardening for another 6 months. And guess what would happen? The weeds just keep coming back, right? They keep coming back and keep coming back until it got to the point where the garden looked just as bad as it did originally before I even ripped out the weeds. The neighbors across the road, completely different story. Every weekend or every fortnight, they're out there doing something to their garden. So if they're walking past, they see a weed, they rip it out. Quite commonly, they plant new plants in there. They mulch it. They get the trimmer out and they kind of trim around the trees to make them all look nice and beautiful. So their garden has been really well looked after, and your mindset works in the same way. If you change a belief pattern and you go, you know what, I'm now going to choose not to believe that particular thing, or I want to change this aspect about my personality, and you take it out of your belief pattern and you leave it at that and you don't do anything else, what ends up happening is, like a weed, it will start to come back into your mindset, and before you know it, you're doing exactly the same thing that you were before. So what needs to happen is a couple of things. First of all, you've got to get rid of any junk. You've got to get rid of any belief patterns that are just not empowering you, that they're not serving you, that they're not helping you, because they are like the weeds in our garden. Secondly, you need to plant the things that you want to see grow in there. So if, for example, to use my example of before, let's say you want to be someone that does exercise consistently. Well, then you need to plant the seeds that say, hey, I regularly go out and do exercise. And you need to water it and nurture it and look after it. And eventually it gets to a point where that becomes a plant in and of itself, and it needs little maintenance because, like a plant in a garden that's being well looked after, it gets strong enough to allow you to do the thing that you want to do. And then finally, so you've ripped out the weeds, you've planted what you want to see in there. The last step of this is that you need to do regular maintenance on your mindset. You've actually got to go in and periodically go through and say to yourself or think, is this particular pattern helping me or not? Is this something that I want to keep or not? And go through the process of ripping things out and putting things back in that you want to go through. And this is a continual process until such time that your new belief patterns grab hold, and it's like they get these roots and they really block in there to allow you to do the things that you want to do. So here's a little bit of homework for you during the week. And if you've got a pen, please write these down, because what I'd like you to do is answer 3 questions throughout the week. The first question is, what are the belief patterns that you want to keep? So I want you to think about all the areas in your life that you do things that are really good, that you look back and you go, you know what, I'm really good at this kind of stuff. And it could be anything. For example, you might be the type of person that is very helpful towards other people. So if someone calls up and says, hey, I need a hand with this, you're the type of person that goes, yep, sure, I'm going to go and help you. You might be the person that cooks really healthy foods because that's something that you want to cultivate. You might be the type of person that sets themselves a task and you just see it until completion. It doesn't really matter what it is, because you've got to remember that whatever your belief pattern is, it's going to execute the same way as a computer program just runs its program. So what I want you to do is look at the belief patterns that you want to keep, the ones that are helping you. And ask yourself this: does it serve me? Does it support me? Does it nurture me? Or does it challenge me in a positive way? And if it does any of those 4 things, keep it. It's worth keeping and it's worth cultivating. The second question that I'd like you to ask of yourself is, what are the belief patterns that currently hold you back or disempower you? So, if you've got aspects of your mindset that are holding you back, one of the first steps to do is that you need to be aware that it's actually there. Because if you go into a garden and someone says, can you rip out the weeds, but you don't know what the weeds look like, you won't know what to rip out. So one of the steps that are really critical in this is that you need to have an understanding of, all right, what is it that's holding me back? What are the things that are stopping me from doing what I really want to do? And write them down. I want you to not judge them. I don't want you to be thinking to yourself, oh, gee, look, I'm an awful person. Look at all these, awful things that I'm writing down, because it's not about that at all. It's about identification so that you know what you can rip out. Okay, so the second part of it is, what are the belief patterns that currently hold you back or disempower you? The third question that I'd like you to answer for yourself is, what belief patterns would you like to have? What belief patterns would you like to have in your system, in your mindset garden? What is it that you want to plant in there, and what is it that you want to see grow? Because by understanding what you're already good at doing and understanding the things that you want to get rid of, and then understanding the things that you actually want to cultivate, you're going to have all the information that you need to do some real serious gardening of your mindset and rip out weeds and do some planting and, do all the things that a garden needs to get it to grow to its full capacity. What I hope the 4-week Mindset Bootcamp provides for you is an ability to go through this and really cultivate the mindset that you want to cultivate, because that's what it's all about. So there's a little bit of homework for you. Now, I'm very conscious of the time, and it looks like we've got about 5 minutes to go. So I wanted to quickly talk to you about the targeted coaching sessions. What's going to happen is that the targeted coaching sessions, as I mentioned at the beginning, are 2 1-hour sessions where you will get to work with either myself or Nicole Latham from Elite Life Mastery. And the way it's going to work is that tomorrow during the day or even in the evening, I'm going to send out an email that's got some information about how to book your sessions. And basically what I'm going to do is, if you're going to be working with me, I've got a schedule of times that I'm available, and you need to nominate a time that you can do your sessions in. And what I'd recommend is try to book the sessions about a week or even 2 weeks apart. What we find is that with mindset coaching, you'll get some information and it takes you a little bit of time just to get an understanding of it and to implement it in your life. And so if you do one session one day and then another session the next day, sometimes you don't get all of the time that might be required to get this really working. So it's probably best to leave a little bit of space. So book your first session in and then have a look at about a week or two later on down the track, book your second session in. For these sessions, please allow about an hour and find a quiet place where you're able to talk on the phone, and the coaches, myself or Nicole, will call you personally. And try to be in a place where you're not going to be interrupted so that you can get the most benefit from the time. Additionally, try to have some pen and paper, because then you can write down some of the suggestions that will come up. And quite often in these coaching sessions, something really jumps out. You go, wow, I really want to keep this. And have a glass of water. And I'm going to have a quick drink of water myself now. Now, really importantly, the coaching sessions are confidential, and whatever gets discussed between you and the coach remains confidential. You're more than welcome to share it with whoever you like, if it's going to help you learn and progress, and that's fine. But from the coach's point of view, we respect that you're talking to us so that we can help you cultivate the mindset that you want to have. And that's a very confidential process from our point of view. So we discuss it with you, but then we don't discuss it any further with anybody else. So we've got a few minutes to go. Are there any questions? If you've got some questions, please type them in, and I'll do my best to answer them. Let me see if something comes up. And if not, if you're comfortable and you're happy with the information that's been presented, can I say thank you for coming along and participating, and thank you for letting me talk to you for this hour. I trust that you've gotten a whole stack of information, and hopefully what will start to happen is that you'll have some ideas start to come into your mind where you go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder how this is going to apply in my life. All right. So I'll hang around for a few minutes if anyone's got some questions that they'd like to type in. And for everyone else, have a great night. Thank you very, very much for coming along. I'll send off an email tomorrow. And if you have any questions that you think of later, please send an email or give me a call on my numbers, and we'll be able to get in contact. I'll put them up on the screen now. Okay, good night, everybody.